Okay, good luck. Um, Tonight, Motzei Shabbos, and the Shabbos before Purim, and it's a time when the Mazel, the Jewish people, shines. And as we saw tonight in the video, the Living Torah video, how the kind of Mazel, kind of additional blessing of good fortune we have in this month is, as the Rebbe said, beyond logic and reason, something unlimited, beyond all calculations. And therefore, the joy in the month of Adar, it's also a joy beyond all calculations in seeing the Hashem's closeness with us. It brings out this incredible joy beyond all calculations, not because of our merits that we feel complacent that we deserve, but the month of Adar is a month where Hashem helps us and blesses us beyond our merits in a way that's beyond logic and reason, beyond all calculations. And when there are merits in addition, so that enhances it. But it's not about merits. But I still wanted to share a few stories tonight about the schus of a mitzvah, the merit of a mitzvah, and how a mitzvah brings an additional blessing and merit from Hashem. L'chaim, l'chaim, v'rach. The stories I'm going to share with you tonight come from the Sefer L'Kutei Sipurim from Rabbi Perlov, which is an important book, a book that the Rebbe quoted from, stories. So not necessarily are these stories themselves authentic, because each story has its own source. But the author of the entire book is someone who was reliable, and therefore these are way up there in as far as authentic stories go. Ein Eitzev ein Tun negen Hashem. There's no way to outsmart Hashem, and there is a plan and destiny for each person. The Sifsei Kohen, the Shach, one of the commentaries to the Code of Jewish Law, who was known that he had divine inspiration. He had this order to his day, and he would only speak to people, would come to ask for his advice, ask for his blessing, ask for his halachic insight. He only would speak to people after he finished his regimen of study. And one day he is in the middle of studying, and he interrupts his studies to speak to one guy, and everyone was surprised, and they thought, okay, so now he interrupted his studies, now he'll be open to talk to everybody else. But he went right back to his studies, and then he finished, and someone had the temerity to ask him, hey, you weren't really interrupting your studies right now for everybody else. Why only do you interrupt your studies for this guy? The Sifsei Kohen said, because this guy is about to pass away. So there's a mitzvah to accompany the dead on their last journey. So therefore I went to accompany him. So the guy he told us to was completely shocked. Like, what? This guy's going to pass away? Like, yeah, he's going to pass away. That's why I accompanied him on this journey. So he ran after the guy, and he caught him, and he said to him, I have an idea. I think you should come back with me, because the journey you're going on is not the best idea. And he told him what the Sifsei Kohen said, and the guy comes, okay, let's go back to town. I'm not doubting you. And they go back to town, and as they reach the outskirts of the town, there are some soldiers who are in position there, and by accident, friendly fire, as they call it, one of the soldiers shot this guy. So now his friend felt mortified. He felt like it's his responsibility. He was one who caused him to die. So he ran back to the Sifsei Kohen, and he asked Sifsei Kohen what he could do to atone for the death of his friend. And the Sifsei Kohen basically said that you do indeed need an atonement, because this person was going to pass away anyways. However, because you brought him to a different place where he was meant to go, so therefore he passed away in a different place. Had he passed away in the forest where he was traveling through, then the bandits who tried to kill him would have tried to kill him, would have been caught, and then no other Jews would have been caught by their attacks. However, now because of this, the the another two Jews, God forbid, will have to pass away in order until the bandits are caught. That's what Sisi Kohen said. That's what Rabbi Perlov writes in the Sefer, and it does unfortunately show that we can't that there's a destiny for each person. But as I said before, the month of Adar is a month when Hashem lifts us up above the rules and a lot of the regulations of the whole spiritual cosmos, where there is merit, there isn't merit. But and even if there is something which is destined for a person, there's a gezeira, there's a decree. Even decrees in Shemayim aren't hard and fast. As the Talmud says, where Yerushalmi says that if someone teaches someone Torah and that person was previously ignorant, so the Gemara Yerushalmi says that the merit of teaching someone Torah is so great, especially someone who doesn't know any Torah, it's such an incredible merit that even if Hashem made a decree and this person who taught the ignoramus Torah, Hashem says, I will nullify my decree for your sake. Because it says in the Torah, if you take something beautiful out of something ugly, then as your mouth says, so shall it be. So although there's a decree in heaven, it's justified according to the Torah law, nevertheless, the merit of teaching an ignorant person Torah is so great that it transforms the decree of Hashem, which is the theme of the month of Adar, that the things which are meant to be one way are transformed to good. So since tonight it's Motzei Shabbos, Melaveh Malka, I want to share with you another story about Melaveh Malka, also from my Perlov's Sefer. There was these two brothers who were very careful to always have Melaveh Malka. Just an aside, Melaveh Malka, it's important not just to eat Melaveh Malka, to eat something, but to set the table. In the Code of Jewish Law, there's a big emphasis on setting the table, that it's just like you set the table for Shabbos, so too the table is meant to be set for the meal after Shabbos for the Melaveh Malka. So, in addition to these festive foods, you're supposed to have Melaveh Malka, but it's all the table's meant to be set. So these two brothers were very into it, and they always would have Melaveh Malka together. But there was one Saturday night that they had to go on a trip. They had to go immediately, and they were thinking, "What? Maybe we should eat quickly before we go." And they're thinking, no, we always are so careful. We always sing songs. We always get into it. We're not going to run into, skip the Melaveh Malka. We're going to do this. What we're going to do is we're going to travel to our destination first. We'll bring with us the meat and the wine and the fish. And when we get there, then we'll do the Melaveh Malka. So that's what they did. They traveled together, not so far away. When we get there, we'll make Melaveh Malka there. But it started to snow very heavily. And these brothers got lost in a forest. And they saw some light on the side of the road. They go into this home and they bring all their stuff in. And when they come in, they are brought into a room, and the room closes behind them, and they're locked in. And they realize that they've entered a home of bandits. They're stuck, and so they're of course mortified. What's going to happen now? One brother says to the other, you know what? It's Saturday night. It's time for Melaveh Malka. This might be our last Melaveh Malka, but let's have Melaveh Malka. And they took out the meat and the wine, and they had and they sang their songs together. And they hear more people coming to the house, and they're screaming, "Open the door! Open the door!" Apparently, there's more bandits, and the bandits open the door of the home, and then they open the door of their room. The new bandits come in and look inside. They close the door, and they start drinking together. The bandits are drinking, and the brothers, of course, are completely scared, trembling. What's going to happen to them? And while they're having their Melaveh Malka and sing their songs, all of a sudden, the bandits bring in another guy, and they open the door and they throw this third Jew into the room. And so he joined their Melaveh Malka, and they're hearing the bandits, drinking and singing and jeering and joking and laughing, and then little by little the sounds get less and get less and less and less until there's complete silence. So when things got completely silent, the third Jew says, "Let's check the door. Maybe it's not really locked so tightly." And sure enough, it wasn't locked tightly. There was just something in front of the door, but the door wasn't actually bolted. So they pushed and they were able to move the door. They come out, they see that all the bandits are completely asleep. And this guy says, "Let's go." And they leave that, and let's get our horses. So he got his horse, they get their horses. And the Rabbi Perlov concludes that the one who saved them, this Jew, was, it's told that this Jew was King David himself. That because they had the meal of King David on Motzei Shabbos, every Saturday night, King David would make a special meal because Hashem told David and Malka, asked Hashem, when will I pass away? And Hashem told him that he'll pass away on a Shabbos. And therefore, every Saturday night, King David would make a special meal that he was still alive, celebrating that he's still alive. And it's called the meal of Mashiach, because King David is the grandfather of Mashiach, and the meal of the Malka, it says that this meal actually nourishes the bone with which Hashem will resurrect us, and Mashiach will come. And that's why this meal is associated with the coming of Mashiach, because just like Mashiach will come, there'll be the integration, there'll be the convergence of the physical and the spiritual. So too, at this meal, we have the integration between Shabbos and after Shabbos. It's not the week yet, it's still a holy time, it's after Shabbos, and we have this meal to connect the holy and the unholy, and that's why it's such a pivotal, important meal. And in that merit, these brothers always keeping Melaveh Malka, they were saved by King David himself, by David Melech himself, who rescued them. Which brings us to the third story, featured story for tonight. This story is also in Rabbi Perlov Sefer. Actually, I can't just tell you three stories. I'll tell you four. So I'll see the fourth. I'll save the feature story for last. Rabbi Perlov writes that there was a Jew. He says he heard this story from Shmuel Grainim Esterman in Lubavitch. Speaking of authentic stories, this is OG. This is pretty authentic. A story from Mashpi in Lubavitch. He said that there was a wealthy man who was approached once by this Jew asking him for a loan, and the wealthy man said, "I can give you a loan if you have a guarantor. Do you have a guarantor?" He says, "I don't have a guarantor, but I can get a guarantor. If I get a guarantor, a good one, someone richer than you. If I get someone richer than you, will you accept and lend me the money?" He's like, "Yeah, no problem." So he comes back a little while later with a note. The note says, "Li hakasef v'li hazav nu'um Hashem." To me, Hashem says, belongs silver, belongs gold. So that's my guarantor. In other words, that's what the paper was saying. My guarantor is Hashem himself. So this wealthy guy is looking at the paper and he's thinking to himself, if this guy actually got a physical person to be the guarantor, he would trust him. Why can't he trust Hashem? Why not? The guy is saying, "I trust Hashem." Why shouldn't he? He says, "Okay, I'll give you the money." He gives him the money. And a little while later, what happens is this guy comes over to his place of business and he brings a significant amount of money. And the secretary asks this guy, he says, "Why are you here?" He says, "I'm paying a debt." "Well, what's your name?" And the secretary tells this whole thing to the wealthy man, the one who had lent the money to this guy. And he said, "I asked him what his name was, told me his name, and I couldn't find his name on the list of people that you lent money to." And so I asked the guy, "Why isn't his name here?" If he said, "Well, I didn't do this through the regular channels. I did this directly with this wealthy guy. I lent him money directly. I'm sorry, I borrowed money directly, and therefore he probably didn't put it down on his usual tally sheets, his usual records, and therefore I'm not listed, but I'm telling you I borrowed money. Here's the money, please give it to him." So the wealthy man looks at the amount of money, and he realizes this is exactly the same amount of money that he lent this guy who had asked Hashem to be his guarantor. And Hashem had paid him back. And Rabbi Shmuel Grainim Esterman, he included the story, he said this was a challenge from Hashem. This was a nisayon, this was a test. Would he lend him the money? And he passed the test, and because of that, he merited to see not just the return of his money, but to see a miracle of Hashem taking care of him. Which brings us to our featured story. As we're approaching the day of Purim, everyone's getting ready with preparing for sending gifts of food and gifts to the poor. And the great meal of Purim, and this year the great meal of Purim might get overshadowed because Shabbos is on Friday night, and that's a separate mitzvah. So we can't ignore the meal of Purim, a special, special meal. And this story I'm going to share with you talks to the special merit of being part of the joy of Purim. So there was a Poretz, as a non-Jewish landowner, and he calls over one of the Jews in his estate, and he says to him, "Have you ever seen your God?" And the Jew's like, "Of course not. No one could see God." He says, "What would you do if I told you that I saw your God?" What are you talking about? So he tells the Jew the following thing. He says that he had a friend, another Polish landowner, who owned a lot of land, the Poretz, and this landowner had a Jew in his estate, and the Jew had received permission to go fishing in one of his rivers, and the agreement was that the Jew would divide equally all the fish he would catch, and the Poretz would get half, and the Jew would get half. But one day, the Jew only got one fish, but it was a beautiful fish. It was a huge, beautiful fish. And the Jew took the fish home. He couldn't overcome this challenge. He took the fish for himself. The deal was, I forgot to mention, that if he only catches one fish, if he has one day, he puts in, he only catches one fish, the fish goes to the Polish landowner, goes to the part, not to him. So the Jew caught one fish, and there are always people around ready to talk about people. So the word reached the Poretz, the word reached this Polish landowner that this Jew had broken the deal. And he was incensed. He was so angry. So he called the Jew over, and he started screaming at him. This is what you guys do. We make a deal. You're dishonest. And he's screaming and screaming, how dare you break the deal? So the Jew says to him, listen, I just want to ask you, have I ever been dishonest with you? Have you ever known me to be dishonest? And he says, no. Have you ever seen me not keep anything that I told you? He says, no. So let me tell you what happened. He says, I was fishing, and it was the day before Purim. Do you know the story of Purim? He asked the Polish landowner. He says, no. He was familiar with it. He was familiar with it. The Jewish people had this thing where there was this king, Achashverosh, who gave permission to Haman to annihilate the Jewish people, and God saved them in the holiday of Purim, and they were rescued. So I needed a fish for the holiday meal for Purim. And I was fishing and working all day trying to find a fish. And now, right before Purim, the end of the day, I caught one fish. So I said to myself, this one time will be okay. I'll take the fish myself, and I'll pay you back double, triple. I'll give you more fish another day. That was what I was thinking. I was thinking that I have to use this fish in honor of this holy holiday, which I can't use a different day. So I was going to pay you back. I wasn't going to take the fish and not give it to you. This fish was going to be used for the special holy holiday, and I planned to pay you back a different day. And so the Polish landowner listens to the whole thing. It seemed like he was somewhat pacified because he was quiet. Okay, go home. But he wasn't that pacified. He was still upset. He was still upset that the Jew had broken the deal. And so at the next party that the Pritzim, all these Polish landowners got together, they get together every so often, they got together, and every other Poretz had a Jew working for them that they weren't happy with. Everyone was talking about what their Jews had done wrong. So this guy tells everybody about how his Jew broke the deal. He had a deal with the fish to split the fish, and there was only catches one fish, and I get the fish. He broke the deal. He was dishonest. And every other landowner also had similar stories of why they weren't happy with their Jew. Parenthetically, the Jews were called by the Polish landowners. They all called them Moshke. That was the name they called. It didn't matter what the Jew's name was. The Pritzim would all call them Moshke. And the Rebbe once explained the reason why they called them Moshke. Moshke is a nickname for Moshe, for Moses, was because every Jew has a spark of Moses in them. And these non-Jews, they sensed this spark of Moses in them. That's why they may have not realized consciously why they chose that name, but that was the real reason. They chose that name because of the spark of Moses that shined in every Jew. By the way, I haven't really seen a source for this, but in Iran, they call Jewish people Kalimi. Kalimi means the ones who speak to Hashem. And the reason why they call Jews Kalimi is because Moses spoke to Hashem. But they call all the Jewish people Kalimi. Everyone they call Kalimi because we all are connected to the Moses within us. That's what I think. I haven't seen it written down, but I'm going to trademark that one. I'm going to anyway. So getting back to our story, so they're all talking about this, and they all decide that they're going to expel all the Jews from their estates. They're going to put together a document. They're all going to sign it, and all together, unanimously, they agreed to do this, and they put together a document, and they're all about to sign a document, which is issuing a decree of expulsion for all the Jews working on their estates and Jews living on their estates, which was a huge deal. So as they're about to do this, and the document is ready, another guy walks in, another Paritz, another landowner. But this guy was clearly more prestigious than everybody else. He was adorned with all kinds of jewelry. He was very handsome, very looked remarkable. And they realized that this landowner was telling the story to this Jew in his estate. He said, this guy was clearly beyond all of us. He was clearly richer than all of us, more important than all of us. And so he comes in. The rule was that when we make a new edict together, the most prestigious person signs first. So obviously he had to sign first because he was the most prestigious. So we handed him the paper and the pen and asked him to sign first. He looks at the paper. He says, you guys, you're making a mistake. All the complaints you have about your Jews are not really, they're negligible things. He says, for example, this Jew who he took the fish and used it for his Purim meal. He says, come on, don't you realize, he tells this to the other Pritzim, don't you realize the Jews had this holiday of Purim because people tried to hurt them and God protected them. If we're going to do this, if we're going to try to hurt them, they're going to become out victorious over us. All the things we have to say about them are not really legitimate reasons to expel them. They're not, and we're not going to win against them. These guys always win. They're going to have a second Purim. What we're going to do is going to cause a second Purim and a third Purim. We're not going to be able to get rid of them. Instead, they're going to have more holidays. There'll be more Purim meals. It's impossible. So I vote that we don't do this. And all the other Pritzim, like, he makes sense. It makes sense. So they cancel the whole thing. So this Paritz is telling the story to this Jew in his estate. And he said, I was embarrassed, but I didn't know who this guy was. And I was embarrassed because this guy was obviously the most famous and most richest of all of the landowners in the whole region. And I didn't know who it was. I mean, Perlov writes in the story that these guys were so arrogant. You can't imagine how arrogant they were. They would do anything to protect their arrogance. And so he didn't know what to do. He didn't want to ask that he doesn't who this guy was, because how could he ask it? That would mean he doesn't know, and that would be so embarrassing. So he wasn't sure what to do. Then he had one close friend. This Paritz, this landowner, had one close friend. He said, I'll ask him. He won't betray me. He won't tell anybody that I don't know. So I went over to that guy. I just want to ask you, who was that guy? Who was this other man that we gave him the honor of signing first? Who was that guy? He said, honestly, I don't know either. You don't know either? So now we were two people who don't know. So it wasn't so embarrassing anymore. So us two decided to ask a third Paritz who was more in the know. Maybe he knows. We asked him, and he didn't know either. And it turned out that none of all the Pritzim, all the many Paritzes who were there, knew who the guy was. but they all let the guy sign first and give him the ability to cancel the decree because of how prestigious he looks. So he tells the Jew, "This is what I meant when I said I saw your God. Who else it must have? It must have been your God. It must have been your God. Otherwise, who possibly could that have been?" Bottom line is, my friends, it's a month of Adar, a month of Mazel, a month of blessing, as the Rebbe says, beyond logic and reason, beyond all calculations. And the way we channel that blessing is by being happy and joyous beyond logic and reason, celebrating now, even before Purim, way before Purim. Every day the Torah says, when Adar comes in, you have to increase in joy. And the Rebbe says that means that every day you have to increase more than the day before. Every moment of Adar to increase more than the moment before. So Hashem should help us. We should increase in the joy of Adar. And then Hashem will give us a reason to celebrate Adar with the abundant blessings of material and spiritual. And the main blessing is we should see the emes blessing of the coming of Mashiach Tzidkenu, B'Karev Mamish. We'll see that all the tzaras, all the hardship of all the Jewish people throughout the Gullus, how it's transformed for good. I will see it's all giving us the everlasting goodness and kindness and sweetness of the coming Mashiach. We'll see it happen immediately. A good